Hey, welcome back to another episode of Women in Tech series. Today, I'm glad to have Rohini Basu with me. Rohini, I think I spelled your name correct. Correct me if I'm wrong.
It is Rohini.
Oh, okay. Okay. So Rohini has near to 11 years of experience in the IT domain, and she is working at Seattle Amazon office. And she is working as a senior data engineer right now, and she is working on one of the emerging products that you people might have used, that is Alexa. So yeah, that's the little intro about Roni from my side. Let me pass it to Roni itself. Roni, will you please like to talk about your journey, your career, your struggle, and every other things that you want to talk about in this I don't know that in this particular series.
Always happens with
Oh,
Alexa.
yeah. Actually, my Alexa got turned on when I
I
was saying
know.
Alexa.
I know.
Yeah. Over to you. Please let us know.
Sure. Um, as you already mentioned, like I've been working in the data domain for 11 years. So I'm a B.Tech in Applied Electronics and Instrumentation Engineering. Um, I had no idea that I would actually end up in the data domain. I
Okay.
really loved instrumentation field, but then I thought that and I got placement in Cognizant and
Mm-hmm.
Infosys and one or two more companies, and I went ahead with Cognizant.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I thought I would do, job for 1 or 2 years. I'll go for a GRE. I'll do masters. I
Okay.
used to love control system and process control and instrumentation
Mm-hmm.
subjects. But then life happened. In CTS, Cognizant, I was during my onboarding session.
Mm-hmm.
I was, onboarded into the data org, which back in those days, 2011, it was called the Data Architecture Center of Excellence. That was
Mm-hmm.
based out in Kolkata. I'm from Kolkata, West Bengal, by the way.
Okay. Okay.
Um, that started my journey in the data domain. In those
Mm-hmm.
days, we were called as database developers.
Right.
Um, yeah. So for the first initial 6 months, I worked with SQL Server SSIS.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got into a client project, where I worked entirely with Sybase ASC. It was a bank,
Mm-hmm.
JP Morgan Chase. Like our client was JP Morgan Chase, one of the best teams I have had in my career so far.
Mm-hmm.
We used to write this, huge stored procedures. I've never worked
Mm-hmm.
in a tool
Mm-hmm.
as of today.
Yeah, when I started my career, it's near to 10 years now when you started. But I actually started with the same thing. I started working with Motilal Oswal. They are the stock broker, leading stock broker
Yeah.
in our. And I used to write store procedure that 100 lines of SQLs and the 200 lines of store procedure. That was like the
Yes.
my first introduction into data engineering. So yeah, we really started same. It's just that
Yes.
10 years gap is there, but yeah, the things remain same. Yeah,
Yes.
please go ahead.
Um, so that was there, and it continued for 5 years. Back in 2014, 2013, 2014, 2015, I was like, I used to heard about all these buzzwords about big data.
Mm-hmm.
But when coming to like service companies, and when you work with clients, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially if your client is a bank, they will say, for us, our product is tier one, and
Mm-hmm.
the tech part is tier two. Like
Title,
whatever
right,
you do,
right,
security is the fundamental thing. We
fun,
don't
right,
care
right.
whether you do it in Sybase, Oracle, or whatever it is. Those
Mm-hmm.
are all on-premise
Right.
databases. But I used to tell my leaders that, I'm hearing all about big data. What is this? Like, can I
Mm-hmm.
do something? Can I get some hands-on?
Mm-hmm.
And we used to get this trainings, basically
Mm-hmm.
the PowerPoint, this audio visual like training sessions with the
Mm-hmm.
end, where you have questions. And I did all that. I'm like, no, this is not working. Like, this can't be it. Like, this is very uh, simple. But something happened in 2014.
Mm-hmm.
Our leadership from the JP Morgan side, the JPMC side, they started an
Mm-hmm.
initiative within the data team that, let's explore new technologies,
Mm-hmm.
at least from the learning purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my first brush with
Mm-hmm.
something other than a columnar or tabular
Mm-hmm.
database.
Mm-hmm.
We I started exploring MongoDB. and
Mm-hmm.
we did a small course on MongoDB from the
Mm-hmm.
MongoDB team itself.
Mm-hmm.
That was my first brush with
Mm-hmm.
with thinking towards how can data be actually arranged in a way that is other than that
Tabular and
tabular
then
format,
yeah,
right?
right.
It was a steep journey,
Mm-hmm.
because to visualize data in some other format other than tabular, and to think like, okay, how do I do the group by now,
Mm-hmm.
how do
Yeah.
I do windowing now?
Mm-hmm.
That was a challenge, but that was my first brush with
Mm-hmm.
the so-called the
Analytical systems and
the analytical system side of things,
right.
other
Yeah.
than the legacy
Mm-hmm.
Sybase, SQL Server, Oracle side of
Mm-hmm.
things. Then from on 2014 I moved 2014 2015 I moved to Bangalore,
Mm-hmm.
and I joined a company called Entity Data,
Mm-hmm.
which is, in my opinion, the turning point in my career, because
Mm-hmm.
somehow I got placed under the big data lead of the India division,
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Santosh Shrikantaya.
Mm-hmm.
And he was the person who kind of shaped my career and was like one of the best mentors I've had so far.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like all the hustling into the data. Again, in Entity, I joined as a Sybase developer, but
Mm-hmm.
I was like, no, now I have to do something. Like
Right.
I have to work. I mean, the
Mm-hmm.
learning part, everything I'll do on my own, but somebody needs to give me an opportunity.
Right.
Uh, no matter how many course certification you do, like I have
Mm-hmm.
never done really all these course and certifications,
Mm-hmm.
but I wanted to get a project where I could
Mm-hmm.
work.
Mm-hmm.
Santosh Shrikantaya was the person to first give me that opportunity and have that faith in me and give me like just POC projects. And he used to tell me that, do hands on. And
Mm-hmm.
unless you do that, you will never
Mm-hmm.
be able to learn.
Mm-hmm.
So my first brush with so-called data engineering was
Mm-hmm.
in entity data,
Mm-hmm.
where the first project I worked
Mm-hmm.
was with this RDS within
Mm-hmm.
AWS, and we
Mm-hmm.
used to maintain our orchestration layer was in Airflow.
Okay.
I used to maintain both the Airflow clusters and
Mm-hmm.
tags. Um, and then there was HDFS. I used to work with HDFS, Kafka.
Mm-hmm.
Then came Spark. Then I got introduced into the streaming pipelines, worked with
Mm-hmm.
Spark streaming.
Mm-hmm.
Like the majority of my working with like all the stacks
Mm-hmm.
happened in
Entity data.
within my tenure in entity, but it was all at a very kind of superficial level. Like I obviously, if you're working with say 10 or 15 stacks in 3 years, you will
Mm-hmm.
not be able to go very deep. You will
Very
not
deep.
be
Right. Right.
right. Then I interviewed for Amazon
Mm-hmm.
and joined as an L5 data engineer in
Mm-hmm.
Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
And then the journey started in Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
So again, in Amazon, so far I was working with the databases that were
Mm-hmm.
mostly index based, right? Like Oracle.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like okay, how to create my indexes for
Mm-hmm.
performance improvement.
Right.
I joined Amazon and I had my first brush with MPP databases
Mm-hmm.
like Redshift.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I realized, how to really think from, you don't have indexes. How do you tune your queries? That's when
Uh-huh.
I, you know,
Start
started
thinking into.
learning distribution keys, sort keys, yeah. And
Mm-hmm.
that has been my journey. Within entity, I learned Python
Mm-hmm.
majorly and built most of my pipelines in Python. In
Mm-hmm.
Amazon, I started working mostly with Scala, because that was always my kind of intention. I am,
Intuition. Yeah.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the journey so far.
Yeah, so it's really great journey, and I can relate some of the part from that. It's I am having near to 4 years of experience in the domain now, but I can, yeah, they still remain the same. When you work with any client who are in the banking domains, the single line that you will always hear that licensing matters and matters the most. So you come up with this. So I work with Motilal Oswal. I try to convince them that oh, Hive is very slow, we can actually move to Apache Spark. And there was like too much of things that I have to convince that, yeah, let's move to Apache Spark and actually convince them. So yeah, that is one of the things. But it's, yeah, really great to work with some conceptual environment where you are told to that you can only work with these things. But as far as I understand the distributed systems, I think the things remain same. You either work with Sybase, work with anything. It's just that you feel happy that things are moving very fast now. You can query data very fast. You are getting to big data domain, but the thinking skills in the data domain remain same.
Absolutely.
That, yeah, it's always the distributed thinkings that matters the most. And this tech stack will keep on changing that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, actually, Ronnie, let's move to the next questions.
Sure.
I try to connect with some of my friends who are in this data engineering domain itself. So I try to take questions from them. What should I ask Ronnie? So they have given me one thing.
Sure.
So as a software engineer, everyone is able to imagine that. Let's suppose if Amazon is creating some product like Amazon Music or Alexa, the software engineers' roles are this. They will be mostly involved there. But how, as a data engineers, if
Yeah.
someone is from the data engineering domain, how a person is involved in creating a great product like Amazon or any other product? What is your day-to-day activity at Amazon as a data engineer?
That's a very good question, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, Data engineering, if you think, is basically a horizontal function,
Mm-hmm.
right? We like, yeah, I'm from Alexa, but we
Mm-hmm.
really do not really build the Alexa skills.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Where we come into picture
Mm-hmm.
is basically building those core data sets and data pipeline by which by which business can take actions.
Mm-hmm.
Like if at a very high level, at a leadership level, all they are interested in knowing is, what is my MAU, what is the monthly active use, like
Mm-hmm.
at a super aggregated level.
Mm-hmm.
But the core, like, to get to that number from the raw application layer,
Mm-hmm.
therein where we come into picture between
Mm-hmm.
the SDEs and the BIEs and the PMs, is that is
Data engineer's life.
our role,
Right.
right?
Mm.
Um, so we build those core data sets and the data functionalities to be
Mm-hmm.
able to, for our business analysts or BIEs, business
Mm-hmm.
intelligence engineers, to
Mm-hmm.
derive that insight,
Mm-hmm.
uh, which would basically drive business.
Mm-hmm.
That's our role,
Mm.
and that's the definition of, I think, um, in my understanding, that's the definition of data engineering
Gender, right?
at a
Absolutely
very
right.
high, at a
Right.
very um, from a day-to-day work perspective, it's basically, uh, number one is open issues. If there are any open issues, if there are any kind of open data quality issues that
Mm-hmm.
needs immediate attention,
Mm-hmm.
right, that is affecting business,
Mm-hmm.
that's
The first.
typically the first task. The
Mm-hmm.
second task is if there is any sprint task,
Mm-hmm.
where you're doing designing or review phase, or
Mm-hmm.
you're actually implementing, developing, right,
Mm-hmm.
then comes the meetings, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
that's how. But we constantly reprioritize our
Mm-hmm.
work. Like, you can think that, okay, tomorrow I'll do, like, I'll design this, I'll build this, like, three tasks maybe, but
Mm-hmm.
then something else comes. So you are constantly in that reprioritizing phases.
Mm-hmm.
There are at times ad hoc requests as well, but we are trying
Right.
our best also to put everything in a process mechanism
Mm-hmm.
format, so that there's
Mm-hmm.
less churn. So
Right.
that's typically how it looks like.
Right. I work at Walmart, typical competitor of Amazon's, and I also do the most of the times I'm also doing the same thing. So when someone asks that you are working at Walmart, so is there any product that you can name that you are creating? I'm like, I will not able to name some product. It's like I'm involved between the decision making and the software engineer. When the software engineers are dumping data, my responsibility is to create some to help the persons who is going to create insights from that. So actually, my interest in the data engineering domain started with one of the video. So when I was in college, I was very much curious to know about the distributed systems, and I thought I will go into this data science part. And I was good with the mathematics, the statistics, and probability, and I used to do good with those courses and the electives and other things. But one day I was just looking through the YouTube video, and I used to follow, write the blogs written by the engineers who are working on the Netflix.
Same.
So yeah, so the Netflix. One day I was just watching the video, and I seen a video where the some of the Netflix developers, they uh, they just conveyed that how a data and engineers teams convey Netflix that their Netflix originals are actually doing better than the normal content, and they actually convinced Netflix teams to start producing the original Netflix content more than buying content from some other producers or something. So I was like, this is very small point, but that's the point which is making Netflix a great, right? So that
Right.
convinced me. So I thought, let
Exactly.
me go to into this. I like software engineering, and data science feels little bit boring to me. I know I'm good at statistics, but let me get into some domain where data is involved and some a little bit of software engineering is involved. And I got into the data engineering now.
Awesome.
I don't know how much I'm going to continue, but yeah, it's going good now. Okay.
But
Yeah.
yeah, but the point that you mentioned about, the storytelling part, right?
Right.
We as data engineers, we actually, I'm not sure like what your role or what you do, but I don't really tell the story, but I enable my analyst to
Mm-hmm.
tell that story like by creating those data sets.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, because there again, uh, probably goes into the data modeling phase where we get
Mm-hmm.
the requirements from our business analysts,
Mm-hmm.
because everything that we do is
Mm-hmm.
basically supporting a business or supporting a
Mm-hmm.
metric. If we
Right.
don't
Right.
have that metric requirement gathering
Mm-hmm.
phase lined up, then we also don't know really how to design this, how to build this,
Right.
what is the question that we are trying to answer. um,
Right.
that is the requirement phase. Yeah.
Right, right. So yeah, I also do the same things. I think the Amazon and the Walmart developers doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Right. So the third question, let's move to some personal questions. So you worked in India, I think 8 or 9 years. Now you're working in Amazon for some of the months. So I wanted to know that is there any cultural difference with respect to the IT, that how people works in US and how people works in the Indian company? Have you found any cultural differences, or the way the people are working is little different, the approach of the problems and the things are little different? Is it nearly same? So how is the cultural another things there?
So is there like two questions, like is it a cultural difference between typical like IT service companies and Amazon, or is it the difference between like working in India and US?
Let's combine it. Let's combine it. India and the versus US. Let's try to talk about it.
So in US, I have been working for a year, and it's mostly in Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
And I was also working in Amazon Hyderabad for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
From a cultural standpoint, really, I haven't seen any, because it's all Amazon, and we are all
Mm-hmm.
are driven by our leadership principles, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, so working in Amazon, both in India and US, I have
Mm-hmm.
not seen much cultural difference, to be very honest. But if
Mm-hmm.
you're talking about a service like, because I have also worked
Got
with
bit
some,
cognizant, yeah, right.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
service companies and product companies, there is a huge difference in how we tackle a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Like I mentioned, in service companies, it's like, you can go n number of stacks, like whatever you feel like, if you're doing a POC, or if it's with the client, it's just like the client approved things, tax.
Mm-hmm.
In Amazon, um, we tackle again, because there is all these leadership principles, and I'm pretty sure in Walmart you also have your principles by which you work. The difference in tackling a problem is, the way we start tackling a problem is basically working backwards.
Mm-hmm.
We working backwards, then you know taking those decisions of what will be my short term mitigations versus what are the long term design thinking that needs to go
Mm-hmm.
right. Doing some of the the deep dives, but
Mm-hmm.
not getting too deep, so that
Mm-hmm.
it becomes it gets into that analysis paralysis phase. So that all these kind of design thinkings that I
Mm-hmm.
do in Amazon, um, I did not really saw much of those
Mm-hmm.
very kind of, because in Amazon also we need to think about scalability.
Mm-hmm.
it's at a scale which was not there in like
The
the
services.
other companies.
Yeah.
So that's the difference from the cultural difference perspective. um Actually, I've been always very lucky to get very good team and very
Right.
good mentors.
Right.
uh, I have not seen much of a cultural difference, maybe because I have always been the same person, so
Mhm.
it's difficult to say. But
Mhm.
yeah, from the work perspective, this is the thing. And again, in service company, you're driven by the client given
Client.
requirement,
Right.
right?
Right.
But here you are the owner, you are the single threaded owner of whatever you are building.
Right. Okay. So when you are working in a data engineering domain, now you are working with Amazon. So is it like only using AWS services, or you also use open source tools or framework? How is the scene there? Means, is it combined, or mostly you are focusing on tools created by Amazon? So, I
um
think.
yeah, like, again, within Amazon, right? It's not
Mhm,
like data engineer at Amazon. It's There are so many teams, and every
mhm,
team
mhm.
is like a startup basically in Amazon, every team.
Right, right, right.
um, and uh, to your question of using open source or not, yes, we use open source,
Mhm,
but only if it is approved
mhm,
and is maintained within our internal repo.
mhm,
um we just don't, like, obviously you can do hands on, but we
mhm.
just don't, download an open source software and
And do we
convert
start
in
using
our
it?
production pipeline. No, we don't do
Mhm,
that.
mhm,
These are all like third party maintained softwares that we use.
mhm, mhm.
um s- uh what was your other question on regarding
So
open?
what are the some of the services that AWS services that a data engineer as a data engineer use in Amazon?
Like the open source.
Not you can name the AWS services
Okay,
itself, like
the
EMR.
AWS stacks that we, yeah, mostly it's AWS.
Mhm,
Mostly it's AWS stacks that we use. Like from the storage perspective, it's Redshift S3. From
mhm,
the compute, again, Redshift SQL and Spark.
mhm,
Uh, uh, Basically EMR, and
mhm,
then we use Lambda for real time. We
mhm,
we have Kinesis Firehose data
mhm,
streams. So
mhm.
that's like the very kind of a high level stack that we
Mhm.
use.
Right.
Regarding open source,
Mhm,
uh, especially within our data teams, there is
mhm,
a huge traction of using, either Hoodie or Iceberg
mhm,
for those CRUD operations, for implementing those CRUD operations. But we
mhm,
are also, like, we are again doing POC, because there can be any decision of using a stack
mhm.
is driven by an use case
Right.
that needs to be supported by a business use case. And
Mhm,
also in Alexa especially, there's a
mhm,
huge focus on privacy and compliance. So
mhm,
what's the best thing that we can do
mhm,
uh, that helps business kind of
mhm,
drives that architecture? And
mhm.
yeah, so that's where our kind of open source tool framework look like. Mostly
Right.
it's by within our AWS services only.
Right. Yeah, that's the benefit of working with any tech-focused company where the services are well defined and the processes are well defined. It's great to work with the product-based company. That's why if somebody come to me and try to connect with me on multiple platform, I try to say it takes effort. It takes effort to go get into product-based company, but that's worth it. Just focus 3 or 4 months or 6 months
Yeah,
and get into the company. And as you know, there are lots of debate going on that DSA, and you have to learn this much of DSA. I'm like, okay, you are going to for some company which is getting lots of resume, right? If something is required, DSA is not like it's 100% waste or 100% crap. It's like you will get something. So why not to practice for 2 or 3 months and
exactly,
get into good company? Then
exactly.
start focusing on the tech stacks where you really the tech stack that you really like, and do the things. Yeah. Okay. So one question I actually got from one of my friend. So I tried to ask. She just started her career. So
Okay.
any advice that you want to give to a girl? I know it for a girl in IT. It's not that easy. There are lots of things. There are lots of things involved, right, from the family and the career perspective. There are multiple things. So, any advice that you want to a girl or anyone, boy or anyone who is just starting in the career, how to get into this IT industry and work great and try to be motivated throughout the journey? Any some of the advice that you wanted to give?
So for young girls who want to
Mhm,
get into DE data engineering field is, um, stick to your dream
mhm,
and um, hustle. And it's not just for girls; it's for
mhm.
anybody,
Everyone. Mhm,
everyone who wants to get into the field.
mhm,
Right? There
mhm,
is no
mhm,
concept of like you have to do the learning on yourself.
mhm, mhm,
uh, do not shy away from learning new technologies,
mhm.
and um, do not shy away from getting a mentor and ask out
Right,
for
right,
help.
right.
And the key to get the most out of a mentor is by asking the right questions. If you go to a
Mhm,
mentor and ask like, what is Spark,
mhm. He
the
will
mentor
like,
will not know like
right,
how much you already know and versus
mm,
where to start from. You have to
right,
ask very key questions, and
right,
the path to asking key questions is to do that research yourself.
mhm, right,
Once you do that research and once
mhm,
you have that knowledge,
mhm,
you can
mhm,
ask very specific questions to your mentor if something is failing or if something is not happening, or if you want
mhm,
to really do a design and if you have a design in mind, go ask
mhm,
your mentor that this is the design that I have in mind, what are the pros and cons, how can I
mhm,
improve.
right,
So these are I think these are the two things at high level.
mhm,
Number one is learn and be curious.
mhm,
Again, taking to the Amazon's leadership principle, learn and be
mhm,
curious,
mhm,
deep dive. Like when you're working on a tool and technology,
mhm,
try to dive deep into what it's actually is about.
mhm,
Uh, the philosophy of the framework, and you do
mhm,
not have to know all the stacks, all the
mhm,
frameworks. A person
mhm,
cannot.
mhm,
Um, just know one computation framework, just know
mhm,
one storage framework.
mhm.
Everything else will be based on, like, if
Based on
you
that,
have
right.
strong knowledge in
Mhm, mhm,
any of these kind of one, at least
mhm,
one tools and
mhm,
technology, you can ramp up in any technologies,
right.
no matter what.
Right. I do agree, Ronnie, means that mentorship roles. So I started my career for one of the startup. So I was having the idea and I started working with the startup. I got a great mentors there. So I always remember his line. So he used to say, see, you are always working, and whenever you get some chance to talk to someone, it's not like you always talk about your personal stuffs. You talk about their struggle and you talk about your problems that you face on day-to-day basis. It can be
True.
about work. Try to discuss with them, and if you suddenly go and just ask a simple question, they will not reply. But
Yeah.
if you just have do the research by yourself and know little bit about the area, they will also get interested, and it
Right.
will be really fruitful. Yeah, right. That's about much serious part. We will have one fun round now. That's the bleach round that I have created. That will be near to data engineering field itself and the software engineering. And you have to give answer in a one word. Okay.
Okay.
So, do you like working from India or US?
uh
Don't be diplomatic. This is the bleach round, right?
Both.
Okay. Okay, let's move to next question. So, work from home, office, or hybrid? What is your preference?
Hybrid.
Okay, and service-based company or the product-based company?
Product based companies.
Okay, so I can see lots of books behind you. Behind you. So, is there any hobby that you do apart from reading books and writing code for Alexa that you want to
this
talk?
this is my husband's library,
Oh,
basically.
okay.
My husband is a bookworm.
Mm-hmm.
I am a music lover and I'm a movie buff.
Mm-hmm.
So in my free time I do research about movies, like
Mm-hmm.
hardcore research.
Mm-hmm.
Rotten Tomatoes, Metacritic,
Mm-hmm.
IMDb, all those, like, and watch them.
Mm-hmm.
And currently I'm learning guitar.
Mm-hmm.
Not sure how far I
Okay.
can go.
Okay.
But yeah, music and movies are two of my key hobby areas, and I love cooking as well. Not
Okay.
on a daily basis, but
Hmm.
on weekends, something special like biryani.
Okay. Uh, so do you think which programming language is going to win this war in the data engineering domain? Will it be Scala, Python, or Java, or any other programming language that you think?
Um, Java. I have a phobia on Java. I don't do Java. Like,
Okay.
um, but I think if you know Scala,
Hmm.
it's you can work with JVM. It
Hmm.
runs on top of JVM. So
Hmm.
I think in the data engineering field,
Hmm.
it's going to be like Scala is going to take a major role.
Role.
Um, and that's the direction that I am trying to get into
Get to.
within my team also.
Hmm.
um, but when it comes to the like the analyst and the science,
Hmm.
Python wins the race hands off.
Hmm.
But for the core DE production pipelines, I
Hmm.
think it's going to be Scala, and I think
Hmm.
one should really learn.
Yeah.
Daniel Porcian has amazing contents
Right. Right.
along the JVM.
Mhm.
um,
Right.
yeah,
Right. So when I shifted from Python, I think near to 2.5 years now. Then after that, I started working with Scala. For now, I'm like, I should only joining a team who is working in Scala. Otherwise, I'm not going to join. So yeah, the it's Scala is a love now.
yeah,
So do you, according to you, do you think which one is much better, data warehouse or data lake?
depends on the use case. I think
Mhm.
Lakehouse.
Okay. And so again, I think I know this answer. AWS services or open source tools?
uh, my personal preference working right now would be AWS, but I have my full vote for open source, because unless we have open source community build, the
Mm-hmm.
amazing ideas won't be incubated, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
so from a day-to-day working perspective, definitely it's AWS is all managed, so AWS.
Mm-hmm.
But from the community building, new service and frameworks perspective, definitely it's going to be open source.
Yeah, that's the end of our Blitz round. And I know we are getting long, but just a one question, just a personal question that I wanted to ask. How do you manage your time? There are lots of things, right? The work and other things. How do you actually manage your times?
I don't know whether I do manage my time very well or not, but
Mm-hmm.
um, I I try to really focus on the work time that I have. Like
Mm-hmm.
when I start my day,
Mm-hmm.
I know I am in that work zone. I I typically don't take a break for like the next, like, let's say 9 to 12. It's all
Mm-hmm.
work hour, 12 to 1. Even if you ping me, you will not get an answer. That's
Mm-hmm.
typically the lunchtime, or whenever the
Mm-hmm.
lunchtime is. If in the lunch, I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing it in 3 to 4. But when I'm logging off
Mm-hmm.
6 or 5:30 or whatever that time is, I know I'm logged off.
Mm-hmm.
Even like I'm not going to answer
Mm-hmm.
anything. My first question would be, if I do not do this now, would the
Mm-hmm.
business fall? If it doesn't, then it can definitely wait for tomorrow. It can definitely
Mm-hmm.
wait for next day.
Right.
So you have to really kind of put that boundary in
Mm-hmm.
your work
Mm-hmm.
zone, and
Mm-hmm.
that's the time when you have to be really careful about that you are not getting distracted by your
Mm-hmm.
day-to-day like chores from your own household activities.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're logged off, you're
Mm-hmm.
just done. You do not
Mm-hmm.
really think about work. It's difficult, and I'm still practicing to do that.
Yeah.
My husband is also in Amazon, so we do end up talking about work also,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but we try not to,
Right.
especially.
Right. So some days back, somebody asked the same question to my leader. Her name is Andrea. So she has near to 14 or 15 years of experience, and she is director now. So her response was direct. It's but just a direct response. Just set the boundary. The same thing she talked that if your business is going to fall, look after it. If you are not going, it is not going to fall. Then just relax and try to focus on your work. So yeah, setting the boundary will really helpful. But I am not sure. I'm very geek in nature, and sometimes I work like hell. It's very late night. I'm working. If I don't get sleep unless I complete the work. I'm trying
I
to set.
know, but
Yeah.
same thing happens. But like in the long term, it's not
Yes.
really sustainable. You can do it like 1 or 2 weeks or
Yes.
maybe a month, but you
Mhm.
actually get burnt
Burn
out,
out.
and
Right. Right.
that is not going to scale, right?
Right.
So I'm trying to practice not to think about work
Mhm.
at all,
Mhm.
because I'm kind of notorious, as you mentioned. We,
Yeah.
we keep on working, but I'm
Working.
trying not to do that anymore.
Right. Okay. I think we have covered most of the point. Ronnie, thank you for your valuable times. I know it's more than 30 minutes now.
No
Okay.
worries.
Thank you
It
for
was a
time.
pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, I think it will inspire many who are just starting this career and other things. And it was really great talking to you. Thank you, Ronnie.
Same. Thank you.
Thank you.